I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address the board for just a moment.
Please, sir.
Okay. Of course, what we're here today on is the Roses. They have their appeal. We were here, I guess, last month. We set today, and today go ahead and have that. I know we're a member or two short on our hearing, but there's no problem with us going forward. Ms. Hawkins, I know you represent the Roses. You're ready to go forward?
Yes, that's correct.
Very good. Kevin, as the ranking individual and the chairman today, the acting chairman today, you will preside over the meeting.
Correct.
Anyone who testifies, I've fixed up a rather simple oath that would be administered, I think per KRS. Anyone who testifies should take this oath and just basically agree to tell the truth, that whatever they testify to. So I will leave this with you.
Okay.
And once again, as city attorney, I act in an advisory capacity. So if any of y'all have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm not the trier of fact or anything like that. That is left to the board in its discretion. And Ms. Hawkins, I guess, as the appellant, you would start us off. You would call your first witness. If you want to do an opening statement, I think that is fine. That would be fine as well. So if there's no questions from the board, I'll move back and sit down.
He had a question. Are we allowed to ask questions after they present their case, or how does that work? At this point, I really don't understand.
Yes. Once Ms. Hawkins puts on a witness, you have the right to ask that individual questions. To clear up anything that you might want to know, any additional information, anything along that. So just like, let's say that Mr. Rose is a witness and he testifies. Once you will, of course, ask him a certain number of questions about what transpired, etc. After that, I think actually Chris has the right to ask questions as well, since you're the respondent, you do. And then if there are questions that you, as the decider of fact and law, have questions that you want to ask, you can ask that as well.
I appreciate that.
Okay, and like I said, if there's any question asked, I will tell you how I think you need to proceed. And I think we talked about this a little bit last time. These are very unique. We don't run into these very often. So we have relaxed rules of evidence and things like that. There is a minimal amount of due process that has to be accorded, and we have to keep things at a certain level, but it's not a court of law. We're somewhere in that.
And I understand that, as I relayed at last meeting. I've been on other boards and there are legal issues that came up. Our attorney always came in, had an executive session with the board, and went through the processes. If there was any additional information that attorney thought would help us, he would provide that to us.
Okay.
So that's where I was coming
Well,
from, because right now, or otherwise, I wouldn't have to ask you, do we have a right to ask questions?
Well, once again, I think we could have done it that, we probably could have done a separate meeting. The only thing about it is we had to do a special meeting to kind of walk through that. You know, if there's any questions you have about how to do this, by all means ask. I will tell you what I think about it. Most of the stuff that we'll discuss here, I think it's very unlikely that we would go into closed session, and I think your deliberations and decisions will need to be in open session as well. So, are there any more questions? Anybody got anything? If not, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Holland. And once again, I will not be conducting the meeting, the chairman will. But at the same time, anybody has a question, forward it to me and I'll be over here, okay?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Oh. I think we talked about this last time, but one of our members, Mr. Thomas DeFlippo, has recused himself. I think he discussed that last time. I think you guys are aware of that. But he will not be sitting in on this, making any determination involving deliberations or anything. So we thought that was prudent once he voiced concern. So he will not be involved in the deliberations or decision on this. One additional thing, if there are copies of ordinances, anything along those lines that the individuals want to introduce into the record, which I think is probably a good idea, a copy of your letter, etc. We will take a copy, we will mark that as Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, either numbers or letters, and keep that as part of the official record. As I understand it, we're recording this meeting as well to have an official record. I know we've got video coverage, which is also good, but from the city's perspective, I think we need a audio recording in case there should be any question about what transpired and what was said. Okay.
That's
Are we ready to go forward?
All right.
Ms. Hoggins, if you wanted to give an opening statement, that's great.
May I approach the board? I have pre-marked exhibits. I have 4 exhibits that I would like to utilize during my client's testimony. I have a copy for everyone that I may approach and distribute those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to mark these collectively or just?
I have them marked 1 through 4, all pre-marked, well, just for identification purpose.
Okay, yeah.
And make sure that, would everyone please review their packet just to make sure you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. There is a 3A attached to number 3. Where should I stand to get a your video, or would be a good place to?
That'd be fine.
Good afternoon, board. I want to, first of all, thank you for giving me your time and consideration in preparation of hearing this appeal and deliberating and making a decision for my clients, Nick and Christy Rose. So I do appreciate your time and attention here this evening, as do my clients. My clients are residents of the city of Stanton, Kentucky. They live at 971 East College Avenue in Stanton. Christy has been a candidate for public office in the city of Stanton, Kentucky. Nick is a businessman who does construction work for his living, and he's also a disabled American veteran. These individuals were cited at their property on or about January 15 of this year. They were cited with violations of 2 ordinances set forth in their notice of violation. The first was relating to livestock within the city limits, and the second was violation of ordinance 20-001, subsection 3, subsection 6, relating to their swimming pool. And it cited that any swimming pool or similar structure built for the purpose of holding or containing water or fluid materials must be covered or completely enclosed, including a gate with a minimum of a 4-foot tall fence. My clients believe that this ordinance has not been violated due to the fact that this structure is an out-of-the-ground pool, which is in excess of 4 feet, and that the plain meaning of the ordinance itself states that it relates to built swimming pools. This is an above-ground pool. It is not a constructed swimming pool. It's personal property that was brought to the property and erected. We believe that the reading says that it must be covered or completely enclosed, including a gate with a minimum of 4-foot tall fence. My clients have a cover for their pool which is in use and completely secures. It is not a thermal blanket, it is a tight cover that could not be removed by a small child or someone who would be a safety hazard for in the city. We have a concern that, first of all, the violation has not been, it is not a violation, that they have not violated the ordinance, and that it does not apply to the specific pool that they have on their property. Our second issue is that we do not feel that there has been uniform enforcement of the ordinance that they alleged has been violated. We believe that that is due to political considerations and other considerations against my clients. We would like to present our position as to the meaning and language and interpretation of the ordinance, their position as to the violation of the ordinance, and then address the issue of non-uniform enforcement for the violations. We were recently presented, I think on April 26th, with a written response by the code enforcement officer. He has cited a new ordinance that we were not given notice of any potential violation of that ordinance. It is a zoning ordinance. He's provided that subsection 8. It was set out in his written response, but that was not in the notice of violation issue that was presented to Mr. and Mrs. Rose. So I would ask you not to consider that ordinance tonight, because my clients did not have notice, they were not served with the violation of that ordinance, and that ordinance should not be considered this evening due to improper notice to the Roses. I would like to call my first witness, Nicholas Rose. If you would come to the front, Ms. Rose, and I'll be seated. And if you would please recite the oath that was, if you would like to administer the oath, sir.
Mr. Rose, you swear to or affirm that the testimony you give here today will be the true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rose, I'm also going to hand you a packet of pre-marked exhibits. Mr. Rose, would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Nick Rose. I live at 971 East College Avenue, Stanton.
What is your occupation?
I'm a business owner.
What type of work do you do?
It's construction.
What is your military status?
A disabled veteran.
When did you acquire that status?
2017.
Are you a resident of the city of Stanton, Kentucky?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been a resident of Stanton, Kentucky?
At that address for 3 years.
Prior to that, have you resided in Stanton or another location in Powell County?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were your prior residences?
I lived on Maple Street. I lived on Redwood Drive. And prior to that, I grew up in various places in the county.
Do you have an out-of-the-ground pool at your residence?
I do.
Will you please describe the pool that is on your property?
It is a above-ground pool that was brought in and erected on site. Has a retractable ladder that we use. Has a cover that is fastened to it. It was built custom for the pool. I mean, it obviously comes with the pool when you buy them.
Do you secure the pool when not in use by either the cover or the ladder?
Yeah, the ladder comes out when I'm not using it, and the cover goes on.
Any other measures to secure your pool?
No.
How long has the pool been on your property?
Almost a year, a full year.
Would you please tell me the depth of the pool from the ground?
It's 5 feet.
Have you been cited with a notice of violation regarding this pool?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'd like you to take a look at what we have pre-marked as Exhibit 1. Can you identify that document?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that document?
This is a notice of violation we were issued. It stated the livestock and sea limits and the notice of violation for the pool.
What action have you taken regarding livestock?
They were removed
When did you remove that?
3 days after we received the violation.
Do you believe that's no longer an issue for the city at this point,
No.
or a subject of your appeal?
No, ma'am, it's no longer an issue.
Can you explain why that you dispute your pool is in violation of the ordinance cited in your notice of violation?
Well, this ordinance violation states that it must be covered or completely enclosed, including a gate with a minimum 4-foot tall fence. The cover on our pool is covered. So that to me, that tells me that that meets the requirement of this ordinance.
Have you also had the opportunity to review a prior ordinance of the city of Stanton, Kentucky, 16-006?
I'm not sure which one it is.
Were you cited with notice of violation of that ordinance?
Which one is that?
It is another ordinance, an earlier ordinance relating to.
Oh, yes, to the pool, yes.
Does that ordinance apply to above ground pools?
No, ma'am.
Has, to your knowledge, has the ordinance 16-006 been repealed?
No, ma'am.
Were you ever cited with a violation of City of Stanton zoning ordinance, Article 8, Section 831?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that in your notice?
Oh, no, ma'am. Sorry.
And prior to receiving a notice of violation, were you given a warning or any other indication that a violation might be forthcoming?
No, ma'am.
Were you given notice that your property was being inspected prior to receiving the notice of violation?
No, ma'am.
Has your wife ran for public office in the city of Stanton, Kentucky?
Yes, ma'am.
What year?
This past election, the 22 election?
Was she successful in that election?
No, ma'am.
When was the notice of violation issued?
It was issued, January 15 to 24.
How many years had you had chickens on the property without a citation?
Probably one.
How long have you had the pool?
1 year.
Do you believe that the citations may have been politically motivated?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me why that you believe that that might be an issue?
Can you elaborate or restate that?
Do you believe that the citations might have been politically motivated?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us why?
We had no violations of any kind prior to her running for mayor. Since then, we've had 4 to 5 separate violations. There are numerous other pools, above ground pools within the county that have received no violations. As per the open records request, we are the only people that received any violation for an above ground pool. The other above ground pools that we have seen with my neighbors have no fence and a lot with no covers.
So that brings me to Exhibit 2. Pursuant to your request, did you ask me to do an open records request to determine the violations for the 2 ordinances in which you were cited
Yes,
from
ma'am.
January 2022 to the present time?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And were any other individuals besides, did you review this open records request response from the code enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any other citizens in Stanton, Kentucky during this time period who were cited with a notice of violation regarding a pool?
No, ma'am.
Is there a photograph attached to the notice of violation which we have pre-marked as Exhibit 1?
Yes, ma'am.
What does that photograph depict?
That is the back of my house.
Did the code enforcement officer come to your property to take the photograph?
No, ma'am.
Where was the photograph taken, to your knowledge?
That was taken from the side of the parkway.
Is the pool in the rear of your residence?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is your next door neighbor on College Avenue?
There's Jackie Smallwood.
Does the Smallwood residence also have a pool?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is the pool located in regard to their residence?
It's in the rear of the residence as well.
If you were at a vantage point to take this photograph of the Rose property, would you also have the vantage point to observe the Smallwood property?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like you to take a look at what we have pre-marked as Exhibit 3. Can you identify that document for me?
That is, that's my neighbor's pool.
May I ask you, how many feet are between the Smallwood pool and the Rose pool?
It's probably 150 feet.
Is the Smallwood pool enclosed by a fence?
No, ma'am.
Is the Smallwood pool covered at all times or not used?
No, ma'am.
Is there a deck allowing stair access to the pool in the Smallwood pool?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like you to your knowledge, has the Smallwood property been cited with a notice of violation?
They have not.
May I ask you to take a look at what we have marked as 3A, which is attached? Let me ask you this, let me go back to 3. Who took this photograph?
I did.
And does it fairly and accurately depict your neighbor's property?
Yes, ma'am.
If you are in the rear of both properties, is it clearly visible, both properties?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any obstruction by bushes, vegetation, trees, foliage?
No, ma'am.
I'd like you to take a look at 3A, and can you identify that document for me?
Yes, ma'am. That is another above ground pool, also on East College Avenue.
Where is it in relation to your property?
It's probably a quarter mile from my house.
Is the pool on the picture 3A, is it in the rear of the home? Is the pool located in the rear of the residence, in the front of the residence, or on the side of the residence?
It's in the rear.
Is it clearly visible from the street view
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
property? Who took that photograph?
I did.
Does that fairly and accurately reflect the condition as you observed it on the day you took the photo and the pool on the property?
Yes, ma'am.
And this photograph did not show up very well. So if he may, I'd like him to approach the board, hand them the exhibit, and let them look at the colored photo, which is more clearly visible. This photo did not take a very good quality. To your knowledge, has this individual on College been cited with any notice of violation regarding the pool?
Can I see it? Thank you. I'm sorry.
I'd like you to look back at Exhibit 2, which is the open records request response from Code Enforcement Officer. And I'd like you to take a look at the second notice of violation attached with that. Open records.
Where are you at?
Open records request, Exhibit 2. I'd like you to take a look at the second violation relating to Raleigh and Samantha Creek. What is the address of that violation and what were the issues?
That is 31 Oak Hill Drive. They were cited for livestock violation, looks to be a goat.
Does this evidence to you that Mr. Cheney has been to Oak Hill Drive and issued this violation to Mr. and Mrs. Creech?
Yes, ma'am. I fear so.
Have you ever had the opportunity to visit Oak Hill Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
Where, just in general terms, can you describe where is Oak Hill Drive?
It is off of Maple Street, I believe. The subdivision to the right side as you're coming to the high school.
What have you observed regarding properties on Oak Hill Drive.
We also, friend of the family that lives there who also has an above ground pool without a fence or a cover.
I'd like you to take a look at exhibit number 4. Can you identify that document?
Yes, ma'am.
What is exhibit 4?
That is Oak Hill Drive. It shows 2 above ground pools with no fence or cover.
And may I ask you where you secured this aerial photo?
I used the Google Maps, I believe, or iPad Maps, whatever it's called.
And again, would you please hand the exhibit to the board? The color copy is better quality. Are you able to observe the pools on Oak Hill Drive from the street scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cheney, to your knowledge, has not issued any violations to any property owners on Oak Hill Drive.
Not regarding pools.
Do you believe the pool ordinances have been uniformly enforced in the city of Stanton, Kentucky?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
If I'm in violation and nobody else has got to receive a violation or a notice, then they're definitely not being distributed equally.
What are you asking from this board tonight?
To remove this violation from us. I don't think that we're in violation of anything.
And just briefly restate why you do not believe your pool is in violation of the ordinance.
Because it doesn't match the description of the ordinance. Our pool meets the requirements by having a cover and a retractable ladder.
No further questions of the witness. I will reserve them for rebuttal. And I would ask that the presiding officer introduce exhibits 1 through 4 into the record on behalf of the appellant.
Yeah, I got you. I wrote it in.
My next witness is Christie Rose.
I have 2 questions for Mr. Rose.
Oh, sorry, no, ma'am.
I do also.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject, I think the next thing we probably need to do is the zoning enforcement officer, if he has questions for Mr. Rose, I would allow him to ask those questions to Mr. Rose. And Mr. Cheney, once again, the purpose of this is to inquire as to his testimony, so sometimes it's difficult not to testify yourself.
Right.
So I think as the respondent, you would be entitled to ask Mr. Rose questions regarding his testimony or anything else that you might. After you're done, then I think the Board of Adjustment can go ahead and ask Mr. Rose some questions as well.
I do not have any additional questions.
You had indicated that on Oak Hill Drive, those pools don't have a fence or they're not covered. Do you know when those pools were put in?
When they were put in,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know that the one furthest back to the right has been there for at least a year or more.
And what's the address of that one?
I don't know.
So you don't know when the pool was installed on 31 Oak Hill Drive? Okay. When was your pool installed?
Probably a year ago.
Okay. Did you get a permit to have the pool installed?
I did not.
Did you look to see if any permit was needed or any ordinances that need to be followed before you had the pool installed?
A permit was not needed for the pool as a personal property.
Did you review state and city guidelines in regard to pools?
I did not review any state guidelines.
Any questions on that?
I have a follow-up question to yours. Then how did you identify that you didn't need to go any farther? Did you speak to someone else? Did they tell you that, hey, you don't have to do that?
As far as putting a pool up,
Yes.
yeah, because it says built pools. We were not building the in-ground pools, so there's no construction.
Okay. Are you aware, and your attorney has pointed out ordinance number 20001, section 3, and it says in the third paragraph of that, that any swimming pool or similar structure down to the city of Stanton's zoning ordinance that says swimming pool, and it says all private in-ground and above-ground pools. That section was just kind of skipped as part of that ordinance.
That was not in the notice of violation. This is we were not given prior notice. The city
I
was
haven't received a
claiming
violation for that ordinance.
that was not part of the violation that was issued, nor part of the appeal. Mr. Cheney filed a written response to the board, and he has brought this ordinance to my attention and the board's attention, but it was not cited in the notice of violation, nor the subject of the appeal. If you look at Exhibit 1, that is not cited as a violation.
To be completely honest, the only violation I have are these two here that was given to me. And that further kind of backs my theory that we're being targeted, because now these violations aren't holding up, so they're digging up another violation I haven't even been cited with. Like that, I haven't even received a violation of that ordinance at all. It was just written in a letter and an email.
Are you aware that zoning administrator is a new position here that we haven't had for a long time?
I believe we had
Yeah, a long time ago we did.
Ann Kell wasn't the zoning administrator?
She was, I don't believe that she had any, schooling in that.
But what was she in that position?
Before my time here, folks, so I'm new here also. As far as being, you're the only person cited, I think we are going through a lot of ordinances that eventually, I believe that others will also be cited. Because zoning enforcement has not been a priority in the past, but to make everything equal for everybody, all zoning ordinances need to be applied equally.
Yes, ma'am, I agree. My only issue with that is I was cited with this. Within 150 feet of me is another pool exactly like mine that was not cited. On Oak Hill Drive, right there, somebody was cited for a livestock violation, and within a rock stone throw away from that was another pool, two other pools that weren't cited. Driving to my house from town, there are 3 different pools that you can see from the road, above ground pools, without fences, without covers, that were not cited either. So if we are citing these, as you said, if they're coming, they today have still not received it, and that was in January. I brought the attention that these were also pools there, and nothing's been cited for those either.
Who did you bring those attention to?
It's been brought here to the last meeting, the last one we set this for.
No, I mean, who did you said you brought attention to those pools to somebody, who was it to?
So my wife spoke to Mr. Cheney about it, but also we discussed it here the last time we were here.
Do you know when your wife spoke to Mr. Cheney?
A few days after we received this violation.
One thing I might interject, that the board maybe ask Mr. Rose was, I know under issue 3, he makes some allegations regarding discrimination based on his wife politically and himself as a disabled American veteran. I just think maybe you should follow up on that and see if there's any, for lack of a better term, hard evidence or anything that he has observed, any statements that's been made to him or anything along those lines.
So,
I didn't hear a lot of.
Thank you for your service. I love the military. We wouldn't have meetings like this if it wasn't for it. You have any evidence that you've been discriminated against because of your military background?
No, sir.
All right, what makes you think your wife's been discriminated because she ran for office? Because my understanding is Mr. Cheney didn't take this position until after the election, so he would not have known if Ms. Rose ran for office.
But he would have. Everybody knows who ran for office.
I can tell you the only person I know that ran for office for mayor, the only person I ever talked to that ran for mayor was Mr. Means. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't even know Ms. Rose ran for office.
Who hires the zoning, who hires Mr. Cheney?
I would guess Mr. Means.
So Mr. Means knows that Ms. Rose is my wife and for me.
So do you have any hard evidence that Mr. Means sent Chris out there to say, hey, I need you to
I do
look at this
not.
property?
No.
Okay.
I would like to follow up on that also. I have military people in my background. My grandson is a derivative of the Agent Orange problem in Vietnam because of the disabilities he has because of my daughter-in-law's military service. Okay. I do not disrespect any kind of person doing any kind of military service. You served your country, you did it well, and I don't understand how your disability could be part of this problem. Also, I have lived in Powell County for over 20 years, paid taxes here. I just moved into the city. You didn't come to my house, and I live right here on 38 Court Street. But of course, neither did the mayor. So I don't know. All I saw was it looked like 20 people were running for the same office. So I don't understand how anybody could feel like they were sectioned out of all of those running as an unfair practice. I know I certainly did.
Well, if you take into consideration the 5 to 6 or more pools within city limits is very small, that has not been cited. It only is a coincidence that my wife ran for mayor and we were the only one cited out of all of the pools, the above ground pools in the city that got cited. Not to mention the above ground pools next door to me in the same yard. We shared the same yard that wasn't cited at the same. Why was their pool not cited at the exact same time my pool was cited? And then why was the pool a quarter of the mile down the road not cited coming to look at that pool? And furthermore, why couldn't the zoning officer who has the right come to my house and say, hey, Ms. Rose, I think you're in violation. I need to check your pool. He has that right. He could have also said, I need to check to see if you have chickens in your backyard. Instead, he pulled off on an emergency highway on the side of the road to take a picture of it. So if you add all of these things up, it doesn't seem like, to me, it seems like there's some kind of targeting going on here.
Okay.
And even if there's not targeting, let's just say there's not, then why are there at least, that we presented here today, 4 other pools within that distance of city limits that were not cited and still haven't been cited?
But my particular opinion is that you presented people that need to be cited. Maybe we should move forward on that.
So the neighbor that he couldn't see that was next to me.
You know what? We're just getting started.
Yes.
Ordinance enforcement has not been good in this city for quite some time. And I believe that equal enforcement is an absolute must.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
one person, not one person. Not this one here, there, wherever. It's for everybody, and it's for everybody's safety, and
100%
especially
agree.
children.
4 months have gone by and nobody else has been cited besides myself.
Well, yeah, I think maybe that will be rectified in the future.
And further, even past that point, the ordinance itself does not pertain to my pool. I'm not in violation of an ordinance, reading it black and white.
Well, and
Are there any other
that's,
questions for
Yeah.
Ms. Rose?
I'm gonna give y'all wide leeway on this, but keep in mind that your job is to ask questions to the witness and not an overall discussion.
Any other questions?
I agree. I apologize.
I'm good.
Is there nothing else from Mr. Rose?
No, sir, Mr.
I
Rose.
would request my next witness, Christy Rose.
Ms. Rose, do you swear to or affirm that the testimony you give here today will be the true and correct and best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Thank you.
Ms. Rose, will you please tell me your name and address?
Yes, it's Christy Rose, 971 East College Avenue, Stanton, Kentucky.
How are you employed?
I actually own a business with my husband. Before that, I was a teacher.
Tell me, were you present during your husband's testimony, and do you agree with the testimony of Mr. Rose? Do you have anything to correct as too far as Mr. Rose's testimony?
Not to correct, no.
And may I ask, the notice says that you are not compliant with the ordinances in Stanton, and you were cited with a specific ordinance. What ordinance were you specifically cited?
So I don't have the paper in front of me, but we were cited
I'll
with
give you,
the chicken ordinance.
I'll have you a copy of the tender exhibits, which is Exhibit 1, so if you would.
So we were cited with the livestock and city limits and the swimming pool.
Were you ever cited with Article 8, Section 831 ordinance that Mr. Cheney has given us a copy of just this evening?
No,
Is that part of the notice you received?
no.
May I ask you why that you do not believe you are in violation of the ordinance cited in your notice of violation?
Well, I think my husband covered that. I am in agreement with him about that violation. Can I freely just talk for just a minute about this notice that we received in the mail? It says on 12/18, I received a complaint regarding the presence of chickens. So I went in to see Mr. Cheney and I asked him if I could see a copy of it. And he said, well, actually there wasn't a complaint. I saw them. And he actually says that in his response, that he saw the chickens on the property. And I do think that it's important as a public representative of the city that we be forthcoming and honest. This starts off with something that isn't forthcoming and honest. There was no complaint. He saw those chickens. He also referred to the back of the highway, at the back of, like we live on the back of the Mountain Parkway. He pulled over on the side of the road, which is a KRS statute. You are not allowed to pull over on the side of the road unless you are in an emergency situation, and there's several that we talked about this morning. But he pulled over and he parked, and he saw the picture of he showed me the picture of the back of the house. And I said, did you pull over on the side of the highway to take this picture of my house? And he said, I did. It is not a public right of way, like he said in his response. So those are two things that are very, violating, for lack of a better word. It feels, we had a conversation in his office and he himself said, well, it's not like I'm targeting you, Christy. Mr. Cheney and I rode back and forth together to college. He knows me well. He could have come to the door and knocked and said, hey, Christy, I think you're in violation of something. That did not happen. So that day, probably we received this letter on the 18th or 19th. I went in the day that I got it in January, and I said to Mr. Cheney, Jackie doesn't have a fence or a cover. And he said, that's right, she doesn't, does she? I saw that. I called her this morning. She still hasn't received a notice or a violation.
When you say Jackie, are you referring to
Mrs.
Mrs.
Smallwood? Yes, my neighbor, Mrs. Smallwood.
Were you given any type of warning or a notice to correct a violation or anything less serious than a notice of violation?
No.
Do you feel that the swimming pool ordinances have been uniformly enforced in the city of Stanton, Kentucky?
I do not.
Can you explain why?
Because Chris and I had a conversation and he acknowledged in January that Jackie did not have a pool, and he saw that when he was pulled over on the side of the road. And this morning, she had not received a violation.
May I ask you, is her pool if you were in the area where the photograph was taken of the rear of your residence, is the Smallwood pool and residence clearly visible?
It is.
And he acknowledged that he had viewed that residence.
He did.
And he has also visited Oak Hill Drive.
That's right.
No one there has been cited as well.
No.
But he did issue a livestock violation. Do you feel that you have,
What, was that a yes? She was shaking her head.
The
last
livestock,
question.
yeah, the livestock violation.
Yeah, if you can just, because we're
Okay,
recording.
yeah.
Yeah, say yes.
Yeah.
It would catch my head shaking, but.
I'm sorry if I interrupted.
do you believe there has been political motivation in the issuance of the violation?
I do.
Can you explain why?
Well, as you asked my husband, without, we thought about bringing a couple people with us, but we didn't know if it would get to that point. We certainly can. There have been people, I've been denied.
Now, please don't say what others have told you.
Right, okay, so then no. But I have been denied the volunteer opportunities. They've chosen other people. I've been nominated for the tourism board 3 to 4 times by the different seats that have been available, and I've been denied those volunteer opportunities.
Are these the only violations that you have received at your property?
Yeah, but no.
Notices?
No. We also built a deck, and we got a violation of the deck because we did not have a building permit for it. We have spoken with other people who have not received those. But we paid our fee. We went down and we did everything. We got in compliance and we paid our fee with that, and that was a non-issue.
And what about the livestock?
We got rid of the chickens. We took them somewhere else.
No further questions of the witness. I'll reserve for rebuttal and allow her to be questioned by the board.
Mr. Chairman, you have any questions? I have no questions.
I have a couple. I'm gonna ask you the same question that I asked you, Mr. Rose. Do you have any hard evidence that you're being, what's the word I'm looking for? Targeted, thank you, Mr. Rose. Targeted by the city council, the mayor, Mr. Cheney. You have any evidence of that? Hard evidence, not hearsay, not anything else?
No, other than Chris saying, well, it's not like I'm targeting you, and pulling it behind the back of the house on the shoulder of the highway. It feels very violating and targeted.
Do you have any proof that your husband in any way is being targeted because of his military background?
No.
Okay. You said you received a violation for building a deck, correct?
Mhm.
Because you didn't have a permit.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a warning?
We did not.
Did you get a written notice?
We did, certified mail.
Okay. Do you have a copy of that?
We did not because it was not a subject of this appeal.
Okay.
They are in compliance and it is not an issue on appeal.
Okay. Did you look before building the deck that you had to have a permit to build a deck? Did you look at any ordinances or?
We need to defer that to my.
He's a construction guy, I get it. I don't have any other questions, do you?
Yeah, I'd like to know, well, he's already gone though.
Is it okay if I ask him and then I can tell you?
Somebody's gonna have to tell me what's right or wrong.
What's the question?
I wanted to know what Mr. Rose found was the ordinance for building the deck after the deck was already built. What kind of information was that? Huh?
My
Pardon me?
opinion is he's already testified.
That's the question.
That should have been asked during his.
So we built the deck, and then we got a notice that we were out of compliance with it because we didn't have a building permit. So we went and he took a drawing of the deck. We paid the fee. We got issued the permit.
He's calling back up and I can speak.
Even under 20-00136, that again comes back to any swimming pool or similar structure. And it again talks about the gate and the minimum 4-foot tall fence.
Yes, ma'am, and that word "or" is very important there. It says a fence or a cover. It does not say "and," it says "or." And so that word is super important because if it's "or," then if we have a cover, we are in compliance with that, and we shouldn't need to build a fence per Chris's recommendation. A fence is gonna cost $5,000 or $6,000. And if it's uniformly applied, that's fine, but if we have to shell out $5,000 or $6,000, but it says or.
Well, and then I'm going back to part of that same ordinance, the 20-001, section 3. Part of that goes into the next area here, which is still the City of Stanton zoning ordinance. All private in-ground and above-ground pools. And then it also talks about the fence.
Yes, but,
Okay, so I think the question is here is if you see two different ordinances, right? Would it not be prudent to come have a conversation with the zoning officer and say, hey, which one do we need to abide by here?
so we didn't see two. This first letter is all that we received in the mail. So I did go have a conversation with Chris.
So before you put the pool in, did you do any research saying, hey, what city ordinances do I need to make sure I'm abiding by, and state regulations, because you have to kind of abide by both, right? So did you do any research to see
Well,
which?
actually, I called the state of Kentucky, and they defer it back to the city.
Okay.
And so my husband said he did call or check. I don't know if he looked online or whatever he did, but he did. So I actually did call yesterday, the state of Kentucky, and they say they defer that back to the city.
Okay. Because the city has a state building code that you have to abide by as well. And it clearly states that you need to have a fence. For your size pool, it would require a fence. But if they told you to refer to the city, that's fine. I don't have any other questions.
Any other questions for Ms. Rose?
I would follow up. Does it make a distinction for an in-ground and out-of-ground pool or a built pool in the ordinance in which you responded?
Yes, this ordinance just says any swimming pool or similar structure built for the purpose of holding or containing water.
Was the pool built on private property?
No.
Do you what is your interpretation of a built pool? What does that mean to you?
And in-ground swimming pool.
Do you maintain that you're not in violation of this ordinance?
Yes.
Were you issued a violation for any other ordinance by the city of Stanton, other than what you have presented as Exhibit 1?
No, just no.
No further questions.
Actually, I have one more question. What color is your house?
It's white.
White with black roof?
Mhm.
Okay. So, question.
I have one more too. In Exhibit 3, that was the photo that was taken by your husband of the neighbors. It looks to me like in front, attached to a building, there is a fence that goes in front of the pool.
That's the neighbor's fence.
That's what I'm saying, because he proved that there was no fence. That is not a fence around the pool, that's what you're saying?
That's a fence that, Karen Green's house, she has a fence that goes all the way around her yard.
Yeah, so.
We have the same thing on our other side, Ben, our other neighbor, he has the same thing, a fence.
All right, okay. And the other neighbor that you listed here, the one neighbor didn't have anything that we had the aerial photo. And this other one that is the darker picture, it looks like there's a fence on that property also.
The color picture up there, you can
Yes,
look at,
except that,
there's no fence.
No fence. Well, I'm talking about a fence in front of the pool.
it actually,
Not to the pool itself.
right, it actually just divides the Crabtree's canyon in that,
Okay.
or that yard.
Anything additional?
No, sir.
That was all I had.
Okay.
I would like to call Mr. Cheney to the stand.
Chris,
Oh, yep. Gotcha.
do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give here today will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Mr. Cheney, do you have a copy of the exhibits that I handed you before the meeting, or would you like me to hand you another
Don't have those.
set of documents?
Please tell me your name and address.
Chris Cheney, 957 Hatton Creek Road, Stanton, Kentucky.
How are you employed?
I'm employed by the city of Stanton as the zoning administrator.
How long have you been employed in that position?
About a year and 3 months.
What training did you receive for that position?
I have been employed as a land use planner. I began in 2008, worked for 5 years, and I was a regional planner dealing with land use issues for another 5 years after that. In this current position.
So
I
I'm not
was-
asking you about your job experience. I'm asking you what specific training or education did you receive to be a code enforcement officer?
I have a Bachelor of Arts from Eastern Kentucky University with a specialization in urban and regional planning. Code enforcement is part of land use planning. My initial position began in 2008. I was in permit review for Jefferson County, Colorado, and worked with the code enforcement officers for the county at the time. We had to work with them and those persons who had violations issued to resolve their issues, whatever they were. They would come in and work with us to be in compliance, a variety of different issues. I have been to many conferences that sat through sessions about code enforcement, about land use planning. I was, in my previous planning position with the Bluegrass Area Development District, I was AICP, a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, which requires a very comprehensive base of knowledge and then an exam that you have to pass to be able to do that. And then also each year you have to do continuing education to maintain those credits. I let that lapse when I left Bluegrass Advocate for to maintain that certification, but I have a considerable background in land use planning, which also involves code enforcement.
Have you ever been a code enforcement officer prior to your employment with the city of Stanton, Kentucky?
Not prior to this position, but I worked closely with code enforcement for 5 years.
Do you recall receiving an open records request from me on behalf of Nick and Christy Rose?
I do.
Would you take a look at exhibit number 2?
So, you got my order. Yes.
Do you agree that that is a complete and accurate copy of your response and includes all documents you provided to me in response to my open records request?
I believe it is, but I don't have a committed to memory of the exact cases that were in there, but it appears to be.
Do you admit that the only violation you have issued in your tenure as code enforcement officer regarding a pool is the Rose property?
That's correct.
May I ask you, did you or did you not receive a complaint about the Rose property?
I did not receive a complaint.
Would you take a look at exhibit number 1? Didn't you state in your notice of violation that you did receive a complaint regarding the Rose property?
Well, as I explained to Mrs. Rose on January 30th when she came into my office, this is a form letter that's generated by our code enforcement system. And that's how the form letter was drafted. I have since, after she brought up that issue, I contacted the vendor that provides these and had them change that so it no longer states that I received a complaint. Now it says I've been made aware, which is general and kind of addresses whether we have a specific complaint or it's something that I observed myself. So that we've taken care of that issue.
Did you read or proofread that letter before you sent it?
I did, but that was.
And it
the
was
form
not
letter that
accurate?
I chose.
You did not receive a complaint?
I did not receive a complaint.
Why did you photograph the rear of the residence? What initiated you to investigate the Rose property?
On, I believe it was December 15th, I was traveling westbound on the Mountain Parkway. I saw chickens out of the corner of my eye. We had just recently had a city council meeting where I had actually lobbied to allow 4 chickens, a small number of chickens, and city council had determined at that time not to allow amendment to the animal control ordinance. And so it was discussed in that meeting that, to be fair and consistent, that we should address any violations of chickens within the city limits. And to date, every property that we're aware of that has chickens, we have issued a violation to. So.
But not pools?
Not pools. At that time, I saw the chickens. I saw them out of the corner of my eye. I did not know which house they belonged to. That was a Friday evening on the way home. I'd been in Slade on Monday when I came into work. Out doing my rounds, I got on the Mountain Parkway. I went back to the spot where I had seen the chickens. I did pull over in the public right of way on the shoulder of the road, took a photo from the public right of way, which I believe, I don't have copies, but it was transmitted to me as part of the initial case material. The photo that I took from the Mountain Parkway.
Are you aware that KRS 189-450 precludes parking on a right-of-way unless it's an emergency situation?
I'm not aware of that statute.
Did anyone direct you specifically to investigate the Roses?
No one did.
You're denying that?
Yes. No one directed me. I, as the zoning administrator, have the authority and the obligation to enforce city ordinances. I work with the mayor, but I am a standalone office. I do not take my every direction from the mayor. I kind of work independently.
May I ask you, was the Smallwood property and the Smallwood pool visible from your viewpoint when you took the photograph of the Rose property?
I do not recall at the moment. I was facing westbound, so it would have been behind me. And I took the photo from the driver's side of the vehicle with the window open, so I probably couldn't have seen it from there.
Do you deny that the Smallwood property was brought to your attention by Christy Rose?
I do not.
And you've taken no action against any other residents in the city of Stanton, Kentucky since you issued the Rose violation?
I have not issued any further violations. I can specifically address the Smallwood property if you would like me to.
My question is this. Did you give notice to them of your intent to visit their property?
I did not, and I didn't visit their property. I was in the public right of way. I am not required by statute or ordinance to notify someone that I am going to observe their property.
Did you give any warning prior to issuing the notice of violation?
Well, the notice of violation is the warning, and that's how it is spelled out in KRS 100 and also in city ordinance.
But you did not try to make any informal adjustment or contact the property owner to express your concerns prior to issuing a violation?
I did not, and I am not required to do so by statute or ordinance.
Have you issued warnings to any other property owners in the city of Stanton, Kentucky regarding pools?
I have not.
I would like to ask you to take a look at Exhibit 2. That is the open records request response. I'd like you to take a look at the second notice of violation that we issued. What is the address of the second violation?
31 Oak Hill Drive.
sides of 31 Oak Hill Drive?
Riley and Samantha Creech.
Did you physically go to Oak Hill Drive to investigate that situation prior to issuing the violation?
I did.
How many times have you been to Oak Hill Drive?
Maybe twice.
And I'd like you to take a look at what we have marked as Exhibit 4, aerial view of Oak Hill Drive. Do you agree that there are 2 swimming pools depicted on the aerial photograph?
It appears so.
Have you taken any action to investigate situations on Oak Hill Drive relating to pools?
I do not.
Even though you were there to issue violations regarding livestock to another individual?
I have not investigated pools on Oak Hill Drive.
Have you investigated any pool in the city of Stanton, Kentucky,
No.
other than the Roses?
Technically, I did not investigate the pool on the Roses.
Did you measure the pool's height?
I did not.
Did you measure the pool's width?
I did not.
Did you investigate the cover of the pool?
In the photo that I took, it's apparent there is no cover and there is a ladder in the pool at the time.
Can you give any explanation why the Rose family is the only resident of Stanton who have been issued a violation regarding the pool?
Typical code enforcement procedure would be that if you are going to issue a violation, you would cite any violation you observe on the property. When I got back to the office and downloaded the photo that I took of the chickens, it was apparent in the photo that there's a pile of dirt and a pool that's not covered and not enclosed. So I included that in the violation at the time. I mean, it's in my photo that I took for evidence. It was really hard for me not to include those. It would have been a dereliction of my duty to ignore them at the time.
You don't believe it's a dereliction of your duty to have at least 4 that we've depicted in photographs, and you've issued no violation for those pools?
As to that, I would say I am an office of 1. I have so many hours in a day. There are numerous violations around the city that I am not able to directly address proactively, and I tend to work reactively for the most part. The chicken issue was one that was brought up in city council, and it was expressed that they wanted me to be fair and consistent with that. So that was a little bit different, but otherwise, I mainly work on complaints. I don't have the resources to notice everyone that is in violation, whether it be pools, whether it be junk vehicles, whether it be trash. That we try to prioritize from the city standpoint in how we address things. So,
You did not receive a complaint regarding the Rose project?
no, it was a personal observation. And
No
it's-
further questions of the witness?
Mr. Cheney,
Mhm.
at any time did the city council, the mayor, or anybody direct you to target the Roses?
No one did.
Can you, I know you said something about their neighbors of Smallwoods. Can you elaborate on why we haven't issued them a?
I know Jackie's husband, and I texted him after the conversation that we had and asked him if their pool had been secured, and he indicated that there was a lockable gate on the stairs to the deck. So that was my investigation of the matter.
Did you go out and observe?
I did not observe, but I did have a specific complaint, and Mrs. Rose said at the time, she did, when she came to visit me on the 30th, that she didn't want to get anybody else in trouble, so I didn't take that as a formal complaint that I should issue violations on her, based on her complaining.
Also, Mrs. Rose indicated that you two rode to college together. Why didn't you just text her about the pool the same as you did the small ones?
That was well over 15, closer to 20 years ago, and I do not have her personal number. And other than riding to school together, we never really had a relationship, friends, or so I didn't feel like I was on that kind of first name basis with them.
Okay, so I know the city council had made a thing about the livestock thing. They want you to correct that. Why didn't you drive out to the Roses when you saw, it's clear in the picture that there's no government, there's a ladder, right? It's clear in that picture.
Yeah.
Why didn't you drive out to the Roses and have a conversation with them about the pool?
When, well, like I said, I observed the chickens. I was all for it, saw them out of the corner of my eye. When I was back in the office, I went out to investigate from the location where I had witnessed the chickens. I took the photo from that location. There was evidence of the chickens. I really didn't need to ask anybody at that point. I had all the information I needed to issue the violation. My belief is it is good to put things in writing and not to necessarily notify verbally, because there's no record of that. And then it's a he said, she said. And from the standpoint of the ordinance and KRS, I'm not obligated to knock on the door or make a phone call. I'm obligated to give written notices for violations of city ordinances, of zoning ordinances.
So the notice of violation, you sent the Roses on 1/15/24. Was this a warning, or was this, if you don't get it done, you're gonna get fined?
The notice of violation typically says you have a certain time period to comply. It's generally 10 days. In some circumstances, depending on what the nature of the violation is, you can grant more, but that's rare. That's not the norm. So 10 days is the statutory norm. And typically there'll be, as in that violation notice, there's a, here's what you need to do to comply.
When you went out to Oak Hill Drive, I guess I can look up the address. 31 Oak Hill Drive, the Creaches, and I guess you observed their chickens. Did you observe their pool at that time?
They do not have a pool. The location indicated in Exhibit 4, that is not 31 Oak Hill Drive. 31 is actually to the south. And I'm not even sure you can see that pool from Oak Hill. It's behind the house.
Okay.
I was unaware that that pool existed. But the property that was actually a goat and chickens, I actually didn't know they had chickens when someone complained about the goat. And I went out to investigate, and I was able to see the goat. And then when I made contact with the Creaches, he told me that they had chickens and rabbits, I think. But to my knowledge, they don't have a pool. And I was not looking at the adjacent property at the time.
I would like to ask, when you noted 22-001 on the swimming pool, why was the second part of that not printed out too, that said any swimming pool? And then all private in-ground and above-ground pools. Is there a reason why that next section was left off?
Are you talking about on the notice of violation?
Yes.
The 20-00136?
Yes. Because that should mean all of it, not just the one paragraph above.
I believe that's the way it is formatted in the system.
Okay.
The first space, we had to make some of the ordinances smaller. It cites the ordinance and the number for reference. And I mean, I can provide the full ordinance for anybody at any time.
Because that is referenced under section 3, number 6. Swimming pools, that should have been part of that too, but you're saying that because of space requirements, you're not allowed to do that?
Well, it's not that I'm not allowed.
Or they do not have the room to put all of that printed
Right,
out
and
there?
actually, this cuts out the part before that talks about cisterns and things like that. It wasn't
Right.
applicable to, that part wasn't applicable. I mean, it still applies.
Right.
Legally, but not to the specific situation.
Just a couple follow-up.
Before you do that, there are a couple things that I think you all need to do at this juncture. We've heard a lot of testimony regarding Stanton City Ordinance 20-001, which I take it is the City of Stanton's nuisance ordinance.
Correct.
I think that needs to be introduced in the record if you have a copy of it, Mr. Cheney.
Well, yes, I provided, not the full copy, but the cited portion to everyone.
I
Okay.
have it right here.
We need to get that into the record.
Is that?
I got it right here.
I would object to the inclusion of zoning ordinance Article 8, subsection 831 being included into the record, because that was not cited as a violation, and no notice of any alleged violation was given to my client.
Yeah, I got that.
Yes.
I think it would be proper to introduce the whole ordinance because we can debate what sections are in play here and what sections they've been notified about, but as I recall, there are sections throughout the ordinance that set forth penalties, things of that nature. So I think you can't include just one provision. I understand Ms. Hawkins' argument about it doesn't involve this or it doesn't involve that, but later on in the ordinance, there's provisions as far as penalties, things like that, when it was passed, other things. So in my opinion, you have to introduce the ordinance as a whole, not just a portion of the ordinance. And I would think that would be fairly common in these type of hearings.
Do I need to get a copy?
You do. I would suggest that. We can come back to that.
Okay.
If you want to continue.
I'll have to print it. I'll have to print it out.
Continue to testify, provide a copy.
I do not.
Okay. Oh, two other things I think y'all should inquire. Like I said, I'm not pointing in any direction, but I think it would be important for Mr. Cheney, obviously as a respondent, he'll have a separate time to testify, I guess, after Ms. Hawkins closes her case. But I would ask him if there's anything else that he feels the board needs to know that was not asked directly by Ms. Hawkins. And probably I think it'd be a good idea for him to explain in his own words why he feels the pool in question is in violation of the ordinance cited.
Would like to ask that question, please?
What was the first?
Is there anything else that you want the board to know
Oh.
that Ms. Hawkins has not asked you basically on the record?
The only thing I would add is that regardless of whether an ordinance is cited or someone's notified about a violation of an ordinance, the ordinance is still a law and it still applies. I don't think you're exempt from the law because someone doesn't tell you there's a law.
I'm going to object to him giving legal opinion or legal advice. I think that's beyond the scope of his
One,
employment and his experience, and
I think it would be better to stick to factual statements as opposed to opinions. Anything that you observed or aware of, anything of that nature that Ms. Hawkins did not ask you directly.
okay.
And there may not be.
I have a question. The day you took the picture, was there a cover on the pool?
In the photo, it appears as if there's not.
And the ladder was in the pool.
Correct.
Was the pool filled?
That I can't tell from the photo.
And then, There's a church in front of the house.
Yeah.
Not directly across, but nearby.
Nearby, okay. Oh, because I just see a steeple, that's what I'm asking.
I will add, from my observations from East College Avenue, that it appears as if the pool is partially buried. And it does not appear as if it's 4 feet tall. It wouldn't technically be an in-ground pool, but it doesn't meet the definition of an above-ground pool as stated in the zoning ordinance.
So the pool is partially buried, or,
It appears to be so.
okay, you say halfway or quarter way?
It's hard to know without
Okay.
seeing it up close. And there was also, it appears, a considerable amount of grading around the pool.
So as far as Article 3, Section 831, it says all private in-ground and above-ground pools, except as noted below, must be covered or completely enclosed. So at the time that you took the picture, if the pool would have been covered, would they have received a violation?
No.
If they had a fence or it was locked, like the Smallwoods, say they have a lock on their gate that goes up to their pool, would they have been in violation?
No. And can I add, if they had notified me there was a cover, the violation would go away.
Did they ever notify you there was a cover? Did they notify you there was a cover after the violation?
We can-
Okay, in one of the pictures, I see that it looks part of the pool is buried, but yet we heard testimony that the pool is 5 feet deep. So, wouldn't that require that we have fencing around the pool itself?
The depth of the pool doesn't come into play. In the zoning ordinance, it speaks to above-ground pools greater than 4 feet. Sorry, I'm trying to do it from memory. Above-ground pools greater than 4 feet in height are exempt from needing to be covered or enclosed. But if it's less than 4 feet, then it would not be exempt.
Is that in the zoning ordinance?
That's in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. That,
So,
I don't know that they're cited for a violation of the zoning ordinance.
But it would still apply.
Okay, explain that.
Well, I mean, it's, so the zoning ordinance is in effect.
Yeah.
Whether you're notified of the ordinance or not.
so let me ask you
It is
this
in effect.
question. The pool is partially buried, so it's
It
got,
appears so.
well, looking at the picture, it looks like it is.
Yes, it is.
Some
so-
portions of it.
So it's under 4 feet tall.
It appears so.
So if it's buried, it's under 4 feet tall.
If it's a 4-foot pool, yes.
But it's above 18 inches though, isn't
Yeah, but that thing about 18 inches where it says, oh, that's in the other one, that's basically exempting like kiddie pools. If it's less than 100 square feet, if it's less than 18 inches tall,
Right.
basically, and it doesn't have recirculating equipment, then it is, it's exempt, but that tends to be like very small. Yeah.
I just have another question. So, in the notice of violation, you were stating that a fence was required. If I'm hearing your testimony correctly, you're saying that a cover now will meet the requirements of the ordinance. You're changing, your testimony appears to be different than what you stated in the notice of violation.
I did state that a fence, obtaining the zoning permit for a fence and construct fence to minimum standards. With any violation and with any of these, if they had talked to me about options, we could have come up with something that worked.
And didn't Christie come immediately to have a meeting with you and to try to resolve this informally with you as soon as she received the notice?
She did not mention anything about a cover or anything else about the pool other than they would need more time to build a fence.
I want to ask you, did you receive and review a copy of my statement of appeal?
I did.
And do you deny that my statement says that the pool was covered and had a retractable ladder?
I do not recall off the top of my head.
So you were given notice of a cover in the statement of appeal?
I would have to look at that to say for sure. I don't remember.
Just to be certain, if you go to the property again, you are satisfied with the cover, then they will be in compliance in your position.
Correct.
No further questions.
No, you haven't, you haven't said anything.
Any questions?
Ms. Hawkins, do you have any additional witnesses or any
I do
additional
not.
testimony? Okay. I guess at this point, Mr. Cheney is the respondent. If Mr. Cheney wants to testify or call witnesses, then this would be his time to do so.
I don't have anything further.
I guess the appellant and the respondent have closed. It's left up to you guys. Now, let me see, the applicable ordinance here is, let me find that. No, you have up to 60 days, if you want to consider to make your ruling. I don't know if that's necessary, or if you feel comfortable making a ruling tonight. It's KRS 100.263. It just says that on any appeal, you will decide it within 60 days. Regardless of whether you do it tonight, or if you do it on day 59, we will need to put findings in writing, and you guys will need to sign off on that. As far as what evidence you heard here, I've taken some notes down, and the reasons for the determination that you reach. And once again, you can decide to uphold the notice of violation, you can dismiss the notice of violation. You have a lot of options as far as what you feel is appropriate in this situation.
Yeah, I think we need a minute to talk, make sure we're all on the same page.
I can't hear what you two are
Oh,
discussing.
sorry.
Yeah, you guys gonna, somebody else is here, folks.
Can we make a decision tonight? I can't.
How about you, Kevin?
I think we need to discuss, make sure we're all on the same page.
If you all have any questions, once again, you're welcome to ask me, and I'll tell you what I think about it.
And we can't go into closed session, right?
No, you cannot. And that's why we should have. But anyway, my
We
question
can't go
to
to
you.
closed session at any time on this or deliberate. We don't need to have conversations about the matter outside public view. So that's why we've not met privately. That's not what we've discussed. I've never discussed this matter with any of you guys outside of this room at the 2 or 3 times that we've discussed it, and that's the appropriate way for this to be handled. It would, in my opinion, be inappropriate for me, as city attorney, to meet with the board and to discuss the Roses case without the Roses being present or their counsel being present.
That's why I said to discuss process. That's different than making any kind of statements about plus or minus
We would still need to
on
be in
that.
open session for that.
Okay.
It's my opinion that they've got to cover the traffic.
There's 2 things in my opinion. They haven't covered what they're within their meeting. They're supposed to be doing.
Right.
The other thing is,
You guys,
You gotta talk so everybody can hear.
so my opinion is, they have, can I ask a question?
yes.
Do you have a current picture of the pool?
Oh, no, I do not. I actually thought you were going to ask me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can make a quick statement real quick. The
Uh,
reason
I don't, hold on a second.
I will say one other thing, once the testimony is, I thought you were going to ask me a question.
Oh, sorry.
But there's a specific statute that says that once the testimony is closed, you can't take additional.
I've observed that property from Highway 15, the pool is covered, the ladder's gone. As of today.
You know, once
I
again,
drive by there twice a day.
Well, yeah.
you know, once again, the notice of violation wasn't for today, it was at
Right.
a time, so.
Yeah.
My other issue is that.
Here it was in
Yeah,
violation.
it was a violation then, yes.
What do we want to do with that violation?
Well,
I think-
that's what all of this is about.
To me, I think it's a immediate point since they come to the finance. You guys are covered on the retractable ladder.
Again, was that brought in and discussed? There was one meeting that was testified to with Mrs. Rose and Chris. I don't believe in testimony that anything was said about the cover at that time. Is what I'm questioning.
And why wasn't that directive given as an option for compliance? You know, I really feel like that's an issue.
Even if he knows the answer, you can't tell.
You know, he should have given direction. His job as a public servant, he's an employee of the city, he is to serve the residents. And he could have discussed options and say, well, no, I don't think we discussed
You didn't
it.
remove the chickens, too, which is the same thing.
We're discussing everything. Just give us a minute.
Well, and we're in the process too, and I know, you know, that we're doing a lot of things with zoning that will bring up a lot of issues that maybe some people haven't dealt with before too.
My thing is this, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate here.
Okay,
I think we need to be fair and consistent,
I believe that.
all right, in everything we do. There are, and I don't know if these other pools that we're looking at are within violation. We don't know if they have a lock gate on them. We don't know if they're covered. Looking at the pictures, you really can't tell if they have a gate on them or not, because they're two above ground pools. So if they have a gate on their deck, they're in compliance, but you can't tell that from this picture.
Right.
So you can't say that they're in violation just from a picture, right? This picture, you can obviously see they're in violation on this day, all right? Now, are they in violation today? Probably not. We haven't, you said you've seen it hasn't, they're saying they're not in violation anymore. And the house down the street from them has an in-ground pool and they have a fence, so they're in compliance.
Yeah.
There's two things I have a problem with here. One is you have an ordinance that states, let me pull it up real quick, that any private in-ground or above-ground pool,
Right.
except as noted, must be covered or completely enclosed, including a gate, with a minimum of 4-foot fence as to prevent unauthorized or accidental access by children.
Yes.
I grew up in Florida. The law, you had to have a fence or
Yep,
some kind of thing protecting the pool.
absolutely.
And I think that's pretty much every state. And I believe homeowners insurance require you to have something to keep children from falling in your pool or climbing in your pool and accidentally drowning. Kids, they get into things.
Sure do.
I understand what's on the violation. We can't put the whole ordinance on the violation. Maybe we need to look into redoing, finding a different company that allows us to do that. But I want to be fair and consistent. I don't want anybody to feel like we're picking on them, and everything I've heard and talked to, nobody has singled anybody out here. I think there is a lack of manpower to get things done, to be, you know, Chris is not what you would call a zone enforcement officer. He's a zone administrator. His job is not to go out and look for violations. If he sees one, then he'll address it. But if he once called into him, he'll address it. But I don't think his job description is to go out and look for violations. I think and here's my vote, and y'all can say yay or nay. I'm just gonna say this. If they're in compliance now, I say we dismiss it, but if it comes up again, then
And at any other location?
in any other location that, it is what it is.
That's my opinion.
But I will say this, when you're building a pool, a deck, or anything to your house, and I've learned this because I've been sitting on this board now for almost a year, I think. I don't know.
Not quite.
Not quite, close. It's important that if you question something or something looks wacky, like there's two ordinances and you're not sure which one to follow, to reach out to somebody and call them before you do something. And it prevents things like this. And this probably could have been prevented if we just had a conversation. Sometimes it's just easier to talk to somebody than it is to just send a letter. And if you're not sure what you need to do, then you need to come talk to that person and say, this is what I'm planning on doing. What do I need to do? Do I need to pull a permit? I thought when you were putting the pool in that you had to pull a permit,
Absolutely,
regardless of any pool.
absolutely.
And that's just me thinking out loud because I'm adding something, I'm changing something to my house, and I'm changing a functionality to my house that I need to pull a permit for that. I'm adding a deck, I need to pull a permit for that. I want a taller than 8-foot fence, I need to pull a permit for that. I'm enclosing my carport, I need to pull a permit for that. We shouldn't just assume that I'm just gonna do it, it's gonna get done, and I don't need to pull a permit for it. It's always easier to ask the question. It doesn't take any time, or it takes a little bit of time, but it doesn't take any money to ask a question. So in my opinion, I motion for dismissal, since they're in compliance now.
I haven't had my questions yet, my say-so here.
I'm just putting a motion.
Well, you
don't have, we're not voting yet.
My problem with all of this is the fact that we have a builder, he's in construction business. And you would think that person would know that you have to contact and get city ordinances before you start doing things to your property within the city limits especially. And it doesn't look like that was done at the time. So at the time, this is a violation. At the time right now, you have met what is now required. So I'm going to agree with both of you, but I think more people need to come in, check these ordinances. They haven't done it before, and if somebody's in construction, they should already know that, and not just the state ordinances.
So let's get it on the record. Somebody needs to make a motion to,
He made the motion.
I made a motion to dismiss.
need a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
To your point, I do have a legitimate question about it. How is that gonna work moving forward when somebody takes the cover off their pool for use, for cleaning, for any point in time? Because at any point in time, if that picture was taken as I was cleaning the leaves out of the pool, it was empty, we were pressure washing it, cleaning the leaves up. So that picture was taken at that time. Next year when I'm doing the same thing, am I again in violation? How is that gonna work?
Is there, I would say anytime your pool is not being used, no matter, a kid can fall in it when it's
Unless
empty,
you're
they crawl in it when it's empty, and they get hurt doing something like that too. Anytime you are not using the pool, you're not doing anything to the pool, you should have it covered and the ladder removed. And that's just to keep you safe, because if somebody gets hurt, or if you have water, even the pool's half filled and a little kid falls in there,
I agree 100%.
they will sue you.
Yeah, no,
And they'll own your house and your car.
And we do, but that's kind of my point, like, if this was, hey, you don't have a current pool, hey, literally, I could have been walked in the house 10 minutes before that to get a drink, to come back out and take a leave out of that pool.
Well, and that's one of the things I said, sometimes you just need to have a conversation, right? Sometimes it's just easier to say, hey, you know, driving by, saw you had a chicken coop, just so that you know, chickens are allowed, and we've talked about chickens till we're blue in the face.
And we'll probably.
And I don't even
talk
eat chicken
more about-
anymore because of that.
We'll probably
But,
talk about chickens again.
And he said, hey, you know, you covered it. Well, I'm just cleaning it out. I have it covered and then we'll have it removed. That's fine, but just make sure it's done. And, you know, he's one person. We gotta cut him a little break. He doesn't have the manpower to go out and look at everybody's property. I mean, him and I have had conversations. And I have a guy across the street from me, he lives by himself, but he has 5 cars, and I think one of them runs. But.
You live across the street from me?
No, it's not true. But, you know, some things I would slide off my back because it's not worth the time and energy. Because I know he's not gonna, he actually used to have 6, he got rid of 1, so maybe he's working his way down, I don't know. But hopefully we get there where he has 1 car. But he'll get there.
And also, whether you're aware or not, and this is just conversation at this point, we have been very busy going through ordinances, revamping ordinances, getting things in a better order to be able to have more compliance so that everything can be evenly submitted to everybody. So if it goes to one, it's gonna go to several.
And less confusing.
And
And
yes,
that's what- that was one of the-
because that's exactly what we've run into, and that's what we are doing here. So, and honestly, I don't understand still you know, I didn't know you were running from there, you didn't stop by my house, you know, and I'm certainly not against veterans, so I don't understand why that was part of this. I truly do not, just because somebody runs for office
No,
and
there
leaves.
were.
There was
There are
waiting.
more.
There's a motion to adjourn. I second it.
I would be, happy to tell you in the hallway.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.